Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. And if you're new here, I am Jim. Thanks for stopping by. Today I'm in On1 Photo Raw 2022, and I've got a landscape, and I was kind of working through an edit, and I've got 5 filters that I use on this landscape that I think had a huge impact, and these are 5 filters, most of which I normally use on landscapes. One that I don't always use, but I really like, and I thought I'd share some of these ideas so that you can hopefully apply them and maybe get some possibly similar or even better results with your own photos. Let's take a look. Here's an image I shot recently in Oregon. There's preview off, so that's the photo before any adjustments in develop. And that's what the photo looks like now. So I did crop and straighten, but other than that, you can see pretty minor adjustments over here. Contrast, highlights, midtones, things like that. A slight temperature and tint adjustment. And I got my base photo from there to there. And what I typically do is, for me, develop is like getting the base photo in place, right? You're developing the raw file. You're just kind of doing your minor, to me, they're generally minor adjustments most of the time, not always. But if you have what I consider a beautiful landscape, in this case, there's not really a lot I want to do in develop. I tend to kind of get the light, reasonably balanced, get things in place, and then hop over to effects, and that's what I do. So the first filter that I'm going to use is dynamic contrast, and you may have seen me do this before. I love to do dynamic contrast. It basically adds a pop of clarity to your image, and in this case, what I want to do is I'm going to get a gradient mask, and what I want to do is this linear top. So something about like that, where I just kind of feather it and kind of blend it together along the horizon, but really, in fact, I'm going to tilt it a little bit too because I want a little bit there, maybe a slight bit broader on the feathering, but something about like that. So if you look at my mask, you know that white reveals, black conceals. So basically, these default adjustments in the dynamic contrast, which is medium and large, are applying in the bottom of the photo. So all I'm doing is giving a little bit of clarity to the sand is really what it comes down to. So there it is before, and there it is now. I'm not going to adjust it any further. I want to leave it like that. I just want a subtle pop simply because I like how it looks, especially right over here, these little bit of ripples. It just gives them a nice little kick. I like that quite a bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy that mask because you've probably seen me do this before. If you've been here before, I'm going to use dynamic contrast again. And if you're guessing that I'm going to paste that and invert it and use negative in the sky, you are right. So I'm going to go over here and doing like, maybe like a negative 25 or something like that in the sky. The opposite, of course, here, if I view, the white is now on top, right? So all it did is basically smooth out the sky. Personal preference, but basically I like to do that, remove clarity from clouds just to give them that softer, kind of more subtle look. Something I just like to do, just personal preference, but it's something I often use on water as well. I did not use it on the sand here because I liked how the ripples in the sand, being wet and being covered with water, I liked how that looked with a little bit of clarity, but I like removing that from the sky. Okay, so that's the first filter. The second one that I want to use here is Tone Enhancer. It's a great tool, lots of power and control here, and while this is not a tutorial on how to use it, I'm going to do a couple of pretty basic things. The first thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of contrast. I start with a fairly flat photo, which I like to do and develop, and then I tend to come back many times here in the filter or effects tab or in local adjustments and add back some contrast. So I'm putting a 22 there, but I'm also going to go down here to curves. I love the curves tool and I love the power that Tone Enhancer has. I don't often talk about curves, but it's very powerful, gives you amazing control over your image. And of course, it gives you the ability to really create a little bit of a nice pop in your image with a little bit more contrast. So I'm doing something about like that. It's pretty gentle. I'm just kind of playing around here until I see what I want. But if I look at the before and after for Tone Enhancer, there it is. You can see it's a bit flatter of an image. And now I've added a little bit more contrast, give it a little bit more pop. And I tend to like having some contrast in an image. I don't want a massively contrasty image, but I definitely want some. I think that difference between the brighter and darker draws in the eye a little bit more. So a bump in contrast with the contrast slider, and then another bump in contrast with the curves tool. So one more time, Tone Enhancer before and after. I think that's looking pretty nice. Now the way I think about editing pictures, again, I did kind of my base stuff on develop when I'm over here in filters. I did a little bit with the detail or clarity with the dynamic contrast. I've now done a few things with light, which is in Tone Enhancer. And what I want to do now is mess with the colors. This was a sunrise. There's a lot to play with here, but as you can see, it's mostly blue. I want to change that slightly and enhance it. Let's get into the next tool. I'm going to go over here and grab Color Enhancer. It's very powerful. As you can see, there's lots of different options here. What I want to do is actually get into these drop-down menus, and these are effectively presets. And what I'm going to do is get this one that says Warmer. It pops the temperature of about 30, so the before and after you can see really blue, and there it is now a little bit warmer. So I love blue and I love warm, and I really like the interplay of the warm and the cool in this image and a lot of my images. I like that warm and cool kind of contrast, for lack of a better word. So this is helping me bring that up a little bit by adding that warmer preset here in Color Enhancer. But it's not enough. There's another good way to pop that. I'm going to add a filter, and this time it's color balance. And so that gives you really powerful control over your colors. I'm going to start in highlights. I'm going to leave the hue at red, and my amount, I'm going to go to mid 30s. So let's say at about a 34, 35. I think that looks really nice in the highlights where it's popping that warmth in those clouds. And I'm going to go into midtones. Now, I typically don't do the same amount in highlights and midtones. I'm going to go a bit lower here, like maybe a 10 or so, something about like that. What I really wanted to do here, as you can see, is accentuate the warm tones in the highlight areas, which is going to be those brighter parts of the clouds. And then using a little bit in the midtones, I think kind of accentuates that and accents it without kind of turning the photo too much into the warmth. So more warmth in the highlights, a little bit less in the midtones. It's kind of a way I think about kind of blending those warmer tones in with the cooler tones by using different amounts in highlights and midtones. So if I turn this off, you can see there's the before and there's the after. That coupled with what I did in Color Enhancer, let me leave color balance on, let me turn off Color Enhancer. You can see a little bit cooler and a little bit warmer. So I think together, if you look at these two, quite a bit cooler overall. The warm tones that were present in the clouds kind of muted really. So Color Enhancer gave a little bit of warmth to the overall photo, and then Color Balance was a bit more warmth, targeted mostly into the highlights with a slight bit into the midtones. I think really brings up that difference between the warm and cool tones across the entire image. So we've covered detail, we've covered light, we've done color. Now I want to add a little bit of mood, and here's a filter that I don't use a lot, but I think works really well on landscapes like this one, and that's the glow filter. I'm going to drop that in, and there's a preset here I want to use, which is called Radiance Glow. I love that, but it's too strong, so one of the great things about On1 is you've got an opacity slider here on all of these filters. In this case, I'm going to drop it to about 50 and just reduce the intensity of that overall. So I give it a little bit of glow, but I pull that back a little bit. So if you look at the before and after, there it is before and there it is after. I think that gives it a nice kind of moody overall look. And so I did it kind of in order. My base photo or my base edit on develop. And then once I got into the filter stack, I went with detail and then light and then color, and I'm kind of wrapping it up with mood. So it's 4 different kind of things I'm thinking about when I'm editing a photo like this. But this glow is a nice little wrap up of mood. There it is before and there it is now. And so if I go and look at my overall photo edit, that's how I started. Really blue, a little bit dark, lacking in contrast, not enough difference between the cool tones and the warm tones. And you go to now, quite a bit of difference between those tones, as well as less flat. In other words, more contrast also brought up mood quite a bit. Now, of course, this being On1 and giving you a lot of different editing options, there's a million other things you could do, including going into local adjustments and doing some specific targeted things in different areas. I don't feel like I need to do it in this photo. It's something to think about, and I'll be back soon with a video about local adjustments. If you want to see that, give me a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. If you have any feedback or ideas or comments about this edit, let me know as well down below. But otherwise, that wraps up this video showing you 5 different filters that I use to create stunning landscapes and kind of how I think about it, the process. You know, base edits there and develop, and then popping over to effects for things like detail, light, color, and mood. Works all really well in On1. That's my edit for this one. My friends, one more time. Before, fairly flat, fairly blue, lacking contrast. And after, certainly not flat, much more contrast, better separation of color, nice mood added, things like that. Power and control, that's what On1 does for you. Thanks for watching, my friends. I appreciate it. I'll be back really soon. You guys take care of yourselves. And until the next video, my friends, adios.